Yo, what is up, boys? How's it going? And welcome back to another stream/video. Today, we're going to be watching the live-action One Piece is Actually Good by Charlie, aka Moist Critical, aka Penguin Zero. Homie has more names than characters in One Piece. Anyway, let's just jump into it. I love the One Piece live action. I thought it was pretty good. I gave it like a 7.5 out of 10. I think there's pros and cons. I think they hit the key points. They captured the characters. They captured the world. But at the same time, it's like, hey, some of the jokes and character moments that I love just weren't there, and that's because of time restraints and all that. I do get it.
Actually did it. They made a live-action anime series that wasn't utter embarrassing trash that's poisonous to the human eyeballs. The live-action One Piece is very impressive. I didn't think it was possible. I thought we'd discover faster than light travel before we discovered how to make a live-action anime that doesn't suck shit.
Yeah, when you look at things like Dragon Ball Evolution and Death Note and Cowboy Bebop, it seemed impossible because they could never capture what the story was about. Like, they always changed way too many things. And I think it's really, really hard to turn a series like Death Note into a movie, or a series like One Piece into a movie. But I think theoretically, it should be possible to turn a series into a series. Just be faithful to the source material. And it's hard with something that's so wacky like One Piece. But clearly it's doable, and maybe it's because Oda was involved and was so strict and didn't let them change too much. But the changes they made with Buggy, good. With Garp and Kobe, I think it worked quite well.
But boy howdy was I wrong. So, I want to give my full thoughts on the One Piece live-action series on Netflix, but before I do that, I'd like to just quickly announce that we're doing a big bundle sale for our comic series Godslap. It's going on right now for the next couple of days, so if you wanted to get into Godslap as well as get some Godslap merch, this is the perfect time for it. It's on badegg.co, I'll put a link in the description. Shameless plug over, let's go ahead and dive in. I'm sure a lot of you know, I was very skeptical when this project was announced. I was even more skeptical and bah-humbogging when they first started releasing a few, short scenes on Twitter from very early on. But then,
yeah, some of the trailers I was like, man, the combat with the Zoro's swordplay looked slow. Nami's actor seemed so emotionless in that moment, and they just included one moment like that. It was like, and one of the things that impressed me with the series was some of the acting, like Buggy and Mihawk, and Nami specifically, and even Sanji. I think Zoro and Luffy were good characters and had decent acting, but it wasn't like, didn't blow my mind.
they started to win me over. The tides were changing when they released a video going over how they built the ships. Because it's practical effects there. They actually built the fucking ships, and they look spectacular in the show. So once they released that, and once they released the following trailer, I was kind of sold on the hopium that this could actually end up being pretty good. And it turns out it is good. I'll go ahead and quickly address this because I know a lot of people will ask, where am I in One Piece at the moment? I'm just about to finish the Thriller Bark arc, and I'm enjoying it. Now let's begin with the most surprising thing about the live-action One Piece. The characters aren't cringe. They actually do a really good job with the characters because they do something very smart. They don't try and emulate the anime characters one-to-one. They capture
You really can't. You have to capture the character and what they're all about. Like, Luffy needs to be carefree and a little bit of an idiot, and he needs to be simple-minded, and he needs to care about his friends, freedom, and people's dreams. And they captured all those things perfectly.
Spirit of the characters from the show and manga without trying to take everything that made them special in the anime and try and have humans cosplay it. Let me explain what I mean. One of my biggest criticisms about adapting anime into live action, the one that I made very vocal with the Cowboy Bebop fucking catastrophe, is that you can't take an animated character and mimic that personality with a real person. The flesh of an organism can only convey so much. However, in animation, you have limitless freedom of expression. And in that medium, it makes sense. It feels natural and normal. It's not like embarrassing or weird. But if you take that and try and have a person do it, then it becomes pretty unwatchably bad. The perfect example of this is actually with Cowboy Bebop, the character Ed, who appears in the anime and the live action. And in the live action, they tried to one-to-one clone Ed. So they had the live-action character of Ed doing the same things the anime counterpart did. Oh, well, Spike, it looks like, that kind of shit. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to watch. It turns out taking an animated character and trying to translate it to a real person doesn't exactly go over super well or look all that great.
It's cringe.
And One Piece must have recognized that because they don't. Again, the spirit is completely intact. All of the characters in the live action feel like the characters in the anime and manga.
I think Luffy's the hardest to do because he's the most, like, don't get me wrong, like, For example, they changed Sanji. They kept him like a gentleman. They kept him badass. They made him hit on women, but they didn't make him like super simpy, comedic, nosebleeds, hard eyes, wiggling body, freaking out for comedic effect because they can't. It's a live action, and if he tried to do that type of stuff, it would be really weird and cringe. So they kept the good things that we like and kind of got rid of. It's not one to one, but with Luffy, I think it's important to his character that he's very simple minded and he acts a certain way. And Inaki really did do it, but that's also why sometimes it's a little bit hard to watch Luffy because seeing a real person do it. It's a little bit cringe at times.
But without them coming across as some kind of half-baked bootleg carbon copy. And that is so refreshing. One Piece, it has a lot of quirky characters. Even as simple as like laughs, they make very over-the-top and fun. Stuff like that. And what I expected going into the live action is they try and keep that same DNA and put it in the live action, and it wouldn't land. But they don't. They take that DNA and put that motherfucker through CRISPR and splice it. They keep the spirit while making it work in live action. Best example is actually Luffy. Now, a lot of you know I haven't been the biggest fan of Luffy, which has made me the #1 most wanted on the Grand Line of the One Piece community. My fucking wanted posters in the billions of berries because I wasn't the biggest Luffy enthusiast. I'm not going to get into the weeds of it, but in a nutshell, the Cliff Notes version was, and according to a lot of members of the community, this is a dub-only problem, so perhaps that's why, Luffy as a character displayed very simple personality traits without a ton of growth. Outside of some very pivotal moments with the crew and very personable moments between Luffy and the crew, the most part was just spent ironing him as stupid and obsessed with meat. And then just nerfing him, taking him out of the equation by getting him stuck in between 2 buildings for 15 episodes or getting him stuck in a snake's belly for 15 episodes, that kind of thing.
I think Luffy is a simple-minded idiot. But at the same time, I do think the anime makes him a little bit harder to watch because they stretch, gamu no pun, they stretch everything out, right? They really filler and pad everything. So a funny moment in the manga ends up being a 3-minute tedious scene in the anime, And like sometimes you like it. Like there's certain things with him, him with meat or in the snake's belly, I find funny. But at the same time, sometimes rewatching it in the anime compared to the manga, it's just like they could have put that joke for 30 seconds, not 3 minutes. And it's just because they just don't want to catch up to the source material.
But as the series has continued to evolve, Luffy is now starting to develop as well. Like I mentioned, in Innie's lobby, he finally recognized that he needs to change as a captain in order to better protect his crewmates. He can't just overpower everyone as he was. Thus, he started to develop new...
And it was cool to see them kind of do that within the live action. Like, Luffy realizes it's not going to be easy to be a captain. There's going to be some tough choices. Did I make the right choices?
Ways of keeping everyone safe and fighting for his friends, so he develops second gear, and now going through Thriller Bark, he's only continuing to develop, thus I am starting to warm up to him more and more. I got a little sidetracked there, I did end up dabbling in the weeds a bit. The point I wanted to make is, Luffy goes through emotional development in the anime over a long period of time. In the live action, they actually take that and condense it to 8 episodes very effectively, I felt. Now, the show does follow the anime and manga story beats pretty closely for the most part, with, of course, some creative liberties taken to make it more conducive to live action. And I think for the...
And at the end of the day, they did have to streamline the process a little bit because they were turning, 50 episodes into, 8 one-hour episodes. I don't know how many hours they cut out, but it was definitely less. And you could see that. It was evident in Orange Town and Syrup Village. It was much shorter. It was evident in Baratie. Luffy didn't even fight Don Krieg. He was kind of just killed by Mihawk on the Grand Line. And then you get a cool little fight between him and Arlong there. And I think that's fine. And then even the Baratie, the fight was relatively short. It was very streamlined, the process. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but like I said earlier, there's pros and cons. I think they handled the backstories and kind of seamed the backstories into the episode better than in the anime and manga. So 1 point goes to the live action for the backstories. I think Orange Town and arguably Syrup Village was better in the live action than in the anime and manga. And of course, they changed a bunch of things. But I think Orange Town was amazing, and Buggy was amazing. And Syrup Village is my least favorite arc in One Piece. And it was pretty tolerable because it was streamlined in the anime, but in the live action. But sadly, because it's so streamlined, there's certain moments like when Luffy fights Don Krieg, it's important for us to realize that he's the type of fighter that has no fear. And having him run through those bullets and get shot and punch through the the punch through the spikes. Those moments are like, in my opinion, pivotal for his character and for Sanji to see him do that, you know? And I think it would have made his fight against Arlong all the better, knowing that he's such a fearless person fighting a shark. Where most people would run and hide and use strategies, he was able to let him bite him in order to get a shot in on him and stuff like that. I'm kind of going all over the place here, but anyway, backstory is better. Orangetown and Syrup Village better. I think Baratie and Arlong Park were slightly worse because it was so streamlined and you didn't get some of the pivotal moments and the fights were shorter, etc. For example, the Nami moment with the straw hat, fantastic. They killed it. It was beautiful. It was emotional. It was all the things I wanted. And then they just didn't do the walk to Arlong Park, which is such a badass moment. So, like I said, positives and negatives, and we continue.
For the most part, all of those changes work really well. The tone of the show is actually far more mature than I would have expected. Like, the characters, aside from just having the mouth of a sailor, some potty mouth, they actually say fuck and shit. They say shit a lot. They actually increased the maturity of most of the characters as well. Like, for example, Usopp. Usopp in the anime, when he first joins the crew, he is very in-your-face, over the top with constant yelling and joking or telling stories. And in the live action, he's very mellow. They really tone that down. Like, he's serious more often than he's silly, and it actually works pretty well.
Now, I mean, he's still captured with the stories, and when he got drunk that night, they still captured the fun aspect of Usopp.
Usopp, of course, in the live action is still telling stories often and telling jokes, but it never feels like it's too much to the point where it gets annoying or oversaying.
I think it's just because he watches the fucking anime, dude, and it's just so much it's just so stretched out.
It's welcome. Like sometimes it did in the anime, where Usopp was on screen, you could most likely bet that it was just going to be a comic relief moment unless shit was about to pop off or he was on fucking death's door. So I just
As much as I love One Piece, and I loved the anime when I was younger, the manga is so good, and whenever I go back to watch the anime, I love it, but it's tough, man. It's tough. I watch that shit at 1.5 times speed.
Actually really like what they did with pretty much all the characters. I think the biggest standout for me is Mihawk, actually. Mihawk is so badass in this show. Like, his introduction in the live action is one of the best I've seen in general. Like, they introduced Mihawk.
Mihawk is perfect. Anyone that thinks Mihawk is bad went into it wanting to hate the series. That's my opinion.
Fuck in the best possible way. His fight with Zoro is really good. It's super true to the source material, and they fucking nailed every beat of it.
There was one thing. I thought it was perfect. The fight was perfect. The oath was good. I just wish Zoro said, "Is that okay with you, King of the Pirates?" after saying he'll never be defeated again and he will be the strongest swordsman, blah, blah, blah. I thought the way they worded that in the anime was spot on. Sorry, I drank like 2 Perriers during this one reaction and I'm so fucking burpy.
It all looks
Can't even
great,
get it out.
honestly. Mihawk, I thought they crushed. But now let's move on from the characters here. Let's talk about how they pulled off capturing so much with so little episodes. Because this goes across a lot of content. And I do think that you can sometimes feel the constraints of that. It does feel a bit rushed at times because there's a lot they need to cover and they don't have a whole lot of time or flexibility to do it. And I think it becomes very noticeable with the Syrup Village arc in particular, when Usopp joins the crew. So, one thing that the show...
I hate Syrup Village, so I was fine with it.
...does is the characters basically teleport everywhere they need to go. They don't really spend much time on the ship, which I do think takes away a little bit of the adventure element. I actually like a lot of the time.
So, early One Piece, first 300 episodes, there's a lot of time traveling. Or even 200. But then afterwards, he kind of stops doing that because it's it gets old. And it's how many tornadoes can they run into? How many tsunamis and sea kings? And how many meals can they have? And jokes can be told on the ship? And as much as I love it, I agree with them toning it down over the course of 1,000 episodes. But I would have liked to see a little bit more of it in this live action because it's so new. You want to get those interactions and get that development and camaraderie going.
Time spent on the ship, like the Going Merry in the anime. In the live action, you don't see a lot of that. They just say where they need to go, and then literally a few seconds later, they're just there, without anything in between. Which, again, I think is just the result of only having 8 episodes to get all of this story in there. So they had to utilize instant transmission. Anyway, they're at Syrup Village, and all of the story beats are the same as they are in the anime and manga. The major differences are Shaman Buchi being different here than in the show and manga, as well as the absence of Django. Django's just not here. They kept him on the bench,
What
which
about
I think is a weird decision,
Onion and Carrot?
Django was pretty fucking cool. But anyway, Syrup Village arc
Just kidding. Who cares about onion and carrot?
introduces Usopp. And in the anime, they make it clear right away that he is a liar. He calls himself the great Captain Usopp. He commands 1,000 pirates. He always, says pirates are coming to the village, even though that's not the case. They also establish that he's cowardly. He runs away from fights. He's afraid of it. And that's because he's weak. He's not strong. And he knows it. These are the big three things. He's a liar, he's cowardly, and he's weak. But throughout this arc, he is established to be someone that has a really high IQ when it comes to battle. He's very creative when it comes to fighting. And it also helps that he's very good at sniping with his slingshot. And the most important thing is that he is undyingly loyal to the people he cares about, so much so that in the face of all of his shortcomings and all of his weakness, he will put his life on the line to protect the people he cares about. And it eventually leads to the fucking Charlie and the Chocolate Factory golden ticket to join the Straw Hat crew. Now, in the live action, they keep all of the beats intact, but since it wraps itself up in 2 episodes, they completely miss the landing on making Usopp a character deserving of joining Luffy's crew. Like, he is a liar, he is cowardly, and he is weak in the live action, but he never has that triumphant moment where he steps up and he tries to protect the people around him.
I feel they could have done it so quickly. I didn't even think about that because I'm not a big fan of Syrup Village. I'm like, oh, it's okay. I never really go back and watch Syrup Village. Like, I haven't re-experienced it like I've re-experienced everything else. So yeah, maybe I am forgetting about that, but for the most part, I agree with Charlie here. They could have just given him this one moment where like he sacrifices himself to save Kaya or Luffy, or not Luffy, whatever, to save Kaya or like distract these people and to give Luffy some time and just let him get like a small injury, you know? Did he? I don't even remember.
One single slingshot pellet at Kuro, the main antagonist of this arc, and that's it. He doesn't get beat up or roughed up or anything like that, whereas in the anime, he goes through hell. He's like multiple times one foot in the fucking grave because he is committed to protecting Kaya and stopping Kuro. And it's this determination to protect those people, even though he's not the strongest, that makes him an admirable character that you can totally understand why you'd want him on board this crew. In the live action, there's just no reason. Like, he doesn't really do anything at all. He tells lies, he tells stories, and to showcase that he's good with a slingshot, he shoots like a little bit of food at a pan. And Luffy's like, oh, you're a good shot. And it was never really about Usopp being like a super strong sniper that...
I mean, that's kind of my point for the entire live action. It's like, it's good. I feel like they hit the key moments and they capture the characters a little bit. But because it's so streamlined and short, you don't get a lot of them. You get one moment of him not being a coward. You get one moment of him being a good shot, and that's it, you know?
Luffy wanted him on board. It was always about his heart, I think. It was always
one moment of Zoro getting lost briefly. It's like, these are funny things. These are important character traits, you know?
About Usopp and how loyal he was to protect people, and how desperately he wanted to follow his dream of overcoming his weakness and his cowardliness and becoming a brave warrior of the sea. In here, none of those qualities are really exhibited in this arc, unfortunately. And I think it's just because, it only had 8 episodes, so they couldn't dedicate enough time to do that. But I still feel like they needed some kind of triumphant moment with Usopp squaring off against Kuro to try and protect Kaya and Nami, as opposed to him just firing one single pellet and then Luffy immediately coming in and saving the day, just fucking blasting Kuro's ass. I do really like the live-action One Piece adaptation, but I'm not 100% sure how effective it's going to be at getting people invested in the One Piece world. I feel like having the context of the anime or manga going into the live action really helps elevate the whole experience because you have all of the background information on these characters and the situations they find themselves in, where someone who's coming in here cold, just a wee lad out in the rain knowing nothing about One Piece, all they have is the live action content to go off of, and I don't know how effective it is at conveying why Usopp is a good character and why Usopp should be on the crew. And I feel that way about a couple of other story elements, but I think Usopp's was the most egregious one that I thought they just didn't quite nail his reason for joining the crew or why the crew would even want him to join in the first place. But overall, like I said, I think the show hits more than it misses. The only other complaint I have is that sometimes the visuals get a little stinky. With a show's budget is...
Yeah, for example, when Garp was chasing and Luffy kind of redirected the cannonball back at Garp, I wish they showcased Usopp being a good shot like they did in the anime. At that time, Usopp gets to try the cannon, and Luffy misses. Usopp tries, hits target first try, because, you know, he's a good shot. So just like, maybe when they're getting cannon shot at them, Usopp shoots and kind of makes contact with Garp's ship. And then you have the moment where Luffy takes down the sail.
as large as this one, that's bound to happen. And I do feel like overall the visuals are great. I was very skeptical on how they'd
I haven't
with
watched the video.
gum abilities. I didn't think
Really?
they'd be able
That's
to
funny.
make those look decent in live action, but they did. For the most part, I thought they nailed that. But there are times where the visuals fucking collapse and they look like literally the Flash level, like DCU bad CGI moments. The worst case, the worst scene really in the whole show is when Garp is chasing the Straw Hats and he throws a cannonball. This happens in the anime as well. Garp chases them, throws cannonballs.
What are the odds?
In the live action, it happens far earlier than it does in the show. And when he throws that cannonball, Luffy inflates and he deflects the cannonball back and it blows up Garp's ship. It blows up one of the things holding the sails. I forgot what it's called. Blows it up and
mast?
it incapacitates them basically. That whole exchange, bouncing the cannonball back, and especially the explosion, look atrocious. Actually looks like Adobe After Effects tutorial on YouTube. But yeah, I'm not going to get too hung up on that. Like I said, there are just some times where the visuals don't hold up
I didn't
super
even care
well,
about the
looking like some
visuals.
shit
I
out
just
of
want
the
Usopp to
CW.
shine.
But for the most part, the visuals are great. So overall, the show I thought nailed it. This is the first like anime adaptation show that I think really surprised me with how good it was. It's clear a lot of passion and love went into this, and it's very clear that Oda himself was involved in the creation of this. I think that's the most important ingredient to have when doing something like this, is have the creator on board to help steer the ship the right way. And I really am excited for the future of this. I hope they continue, and I hope they're given more time. Because I think a lot of the things that myself and a few other people didn't think landed that well is just the result of having to cram so much in so short a time. Oh, also, I really wanted to mention this. They did make a major change with Don Krieg. I don't want to get into spoilers because this actually is totally different than the anime and manga, and it changes everything about, well, I'm not going to say everything, it changes a lot about Sanji joining the crew as well as Arlong. There's huge implications for a big change they made in regards with Don Krieg and that entire situation there, so I didn't love that. I didn't think it was horrible, but the unfortunate consequence of that is Sanji inevitably joins the crew, of course, and for some reason it feels like he's immediately obsessed with Luffy and the crew. Like, he is really taken to them so quickly. Again, the result of needing to cram so much content in so short a time, but it just feels really out of place for Sanji in particular, who comes aboard with no hesitation whatsoever, no real, like, conundrum or really any thought whatsoever, aside from just, sounds good, I'm in. And then immediately, like, he's right or...
I mean, he's a cook. He wants to use his actual cooking skills that Zeph wouldn't really let him use in the restaurant because he had to cook his recipes and very normal food. He wants to find the all blue and achieve his dream, and Luffy always inspires people to chase their dreams. And he's a ladies' man and cares about saving women, and Nami was in need of help. I think with the little amount of time they did, I think it worked. I think it made sense for him to leave and join and go off on his journey. However, obviously, watching the original and knowing Luffy saves the Baratie from Don Krieg and everything he does and watches him fight and sees the type of man he is, of course, the original is a little bit better when it comes to the Baratie.
Die with this crew forever within a couple of minutes. So towards the end, they made some very huge changes that I think had massive consequences and not always in the best way. But for the most part, though, I do feel a lot of the changes they made a lot of sense. And even the change they made here, I get it because of time constraints. That doesn't mean that it's great, though. It's hard to talk about it without getting into specific spoilers, but I think if you watch it and have watched the show or read the manga, you'll know what I mean, and I think you'll probably agree with me, but I have no idea. This is just my opinion on it. But anyway, overall, I did really like live-action One Piece. Plugging it into the Moist Meter, I'm going to give it a comfortable 80%. And I'm very excited to see what they do with this going forward, if it's
I gave it like a 7.5 out of 10. I think I barely give the East... I give the East Blue manga like an 8 out of 10, because I think it's decent. Right, but One Piece is one of those shows that gets better and better, and I don't want to overvalue the live action just because it's better than other live actions. At the end of the day, I think it's good, and some things it does better, some things it does worse. I think it's slightly worse than the original source material, and because of that, like, just in general, I think it's like a 7.5. And if they maintain this level of authenticity and quality, I think just like actual One Piece, it'll rise. My rank will rise as we go.
Popular enough to get a second season. But yeah, anyway, that's about it. So, yeah.
All right, I wanted to watch one
We're the
more
cast
thing.
of One Piece, and today